It seems like there are just some people who have that it factor that makes them super cool, fascinating, or interesting. It's usually the ones with the quirky personality, the ones who are super confident, the ones who know a ton about random stuff, or the people that have just somehow figured out to make themselves a people magnet. For the longest time, I struggled with wanting so badly to feel more interesting, especially in conversation with people, meeting new people. I always wished of being that girl, the attractive one, the one who is always super confident, the quirky ones, the ones who were good at sports, the ones who were super smart. I just always felt like I didn't have that it factor. I didn't have that one thing that made me stand out from other people. But after a long time, I realized that what I was searching for didn't really exist. And so in today's video, I want to share with you guys why you're not being an interesting person and how you can be one. Now, before we get into the video, I just want to quickly introduce myself. My name is Bridget. On this channel, I talk a lot about introverts, I talk about social anxiety, general anxiety, and things like that. So make sure you go check out some of my other videos as well. So with that being said, let's get into the video. Now, the thing I mentioned at the beginning of this video, there was something that I was searching for that never really existed. Because I believed for so long that I wasn't interesting, that I wasn't smart enough, pretty enough, funny enough, I became that person. I kept telling myself I was one way, and so I acted in accordance. The belief that you are not interesting is just that, it's a belief. And oftentimes that belief becomes this self-fulfilling prophecy for us. So in terms of, wanting to be more interesting, if we keep telling ourselves we're not interesting, it's most likely going to prevent us from having the interactions that would maybe help us become more interesting. It's going to prevent us from having deeper conversations, from going on dates, to meeting new people. It prevents us from trying new things. And it leads us to seeing those signs of rejection, even when they're not actually there. I see this in my life, and I see this in my friend's life. I see this in my family's life. When we just keep telling ourselves that we're one way, and we just keep doing it. Like, I'm a Virgo, so I do blank. I'm always this way, and that's how it's gonna be. You can't just tell yourself you're one way, or, that's just who you are. If it's going to make you like this toxic person, or like this person that doesn't apologize or has a lot of opinions and doesn't really care what people say, if you're telling yourself something and it's leading you down a path that's either not going to make you more fulfilled or have deeper relationships or have vulnerability in your life and honesty and openness, then it's really not a belief that you should have. And so take a look at the belief behind that want or need to be interesting. What are you telling yourself that's stopping you? Now, the second thing, you don't need to be interesting in the way that you think. For me, there was this vision that I had, right? The one that I talked about in the beginning of the pretty girl, the smart girl, funny girl. I had this vision of what interesting meant, or what I thought other people thought interesting was. And oftentimes that's not the case. And again, it goes back to that belief, right? I was telling myself I'm not interesting because I thought interesting looked a certain way. But interesting to me might not be interesting to someone else. You don't have to have these crazy unique hobbies, or have traveled the world to these exotic places, or have a super cool and fun job, or be that magnetic person. You don't have to have all those things, or even one of those things, to be interesting. You just need to be authentic. And that brings me to my next point. Stop thinking about the outcome of the conversation. Enjoy the experience. Forget how you sound or how you look or what you're saying even. Don't think of every interaction as a test. Just think of it as practice. So often I was left with this feeling of being a failure after having conversation and thinking that I either didn't sound this or that enough. And I was so focused on the outcome, right? Did I say the right things? Did I look the right way? Did that person seem interested in me? And if it wasn't, I figured, well, I guess that's just not who I am. I guess I'm not good at this. But it takes practice. And the more you focus on the outcome of the conversation, the less of likelihood that the conversation's going to go well. Because you're making yourself anxious. You're putting yourself in a bad position just by doing that. instead of if you actually were present in the conversation. It's not a test, it's just practice. This leads me to my last point. Talking less will actually help you. I had this idea that being the overconfident person, the person who was loud and funny and again was that people magnet, was that interesting person. But oftentimes those types of people just look self-centered. And the older I get, the more that I realize that the less I talk, the more deeper the conversations can potentially go. The less I talk about myself, the more that I listen to that person and genuinely become interested in that person. That's when I get to have those deeper conversations, when I find the more meaningful connections. And by the end of the conversation, I want to get to know that person more, or that person wants to get to know me more, because that conversation was good. The outcome was good. When you spend more time listening rather than thinking of that outcome, you're going to ask the right questions. You're going to say the right thing because you're not focused on how you look or how you sound or what might come of this conversation. You're just focusing on what that person has to say. So I'd like all of us to change our perspective on what being interesting actually is. Listen to this video again, try out some of these things, and I guarantee you will see a change in your conversations. You will feel a difference in how you see yourself in those conversations. Again, what you see as interesting is not maybe what I see as interesting or the person next to me. We all have different perspectives on it. So if you change your perspective on what you think is interesting and how you could potentially be interesting, well, you're going to open up a whole world of opportunity for yourself. So that is all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed and found it useful as always, and I will see you next time. Bye.